evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It is October 7th, Tuesday night, 5 o'clock. We're in the Lashley courtroom. Thank you so much, everybody from the Historic Preservation Board, for being here with us tonight. Do we need to call a roll call? Let's start with ours.
Janine Polk here.
Greg Julian.
Oh, Melissa Lockhart.
Janice Denton.
Do you want to do a roll call for Historic?
You need to, yes.
Okay, roll call for all of you as well.
Don Good. Lucille Ponte.
Steve Valdez.
David Perry.
Charlie Noble.
Teresa Deskin.
Fantastic. Do we have anybody here for invocation tonight?
No, we don't.
Okay, we don't have anybody here unless, Kathleen, do you want to do invocation for us?
Kathleen's like, oh.
Sure. Put her on the spot here.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask your blessing on all in this assembly, that you would keep your hand on all, that you would help them to make wise decisions. And Lord, we just thank you for our beautiful city, for our beautiful historic buildings. And we ask your blessing on the people of Israel on this most solemn day of remembrance. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I do ask all our veterans to stay standing to be recognized for their service. Thank you for our freedom. Do we have any announcements? No? Do you have any announcements? No. Okay, our next regular meeting is actually going to be tomorrow, and it's going to be at the Burnt Store Presbyterian Church at 9 a.m. Do we approve the agenda? Does everybody approve the agenda?
The agenda for tonight?
For tonight?
No, I've got one thing to add. We had a very lengthy discussion at the Preservation Board meeting on September 25th about structural engineering reports, because that's been a thorn for us. And so that's why I passed out the Florida Senate statute for structural engineering certification, and it's not on the agenda, so
Okay.
whenever we want to discuss it.
Okay for us to put that back onto the agenda?
Yes. Sure.
Okay, fantastic. Yes.
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 Post-damage, where is that at?
Post-damage and rebuild decisions, final authority first.
You want me to add that?
No, that's, it's okay.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to have public input. Anyone wishing to address council, either the council or the board, on any matter must state their name for the record. Each person will be allowed to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. And come to the podium, please.
Good evening, Marilyn Mizell. Thank you for this opportunity. Just a couple of things. I live in the historic district. I have both a historic home and a historic business downtown. I just really want to make the comments of the preservation of our historic district is good public policy. People come to Punta Gorda and we want to keep that vibe alive, and I'm actually copying that from St. Pete, that they have a great little thing. We're talking about it being a walkable, pedestrian-scaled, historic Main Street, and it's a tourist draw. And so voices opposing the preservation of our historic character are out of step with not only the desires and the tastes of the residents, especially when you include the whole county. People are coming downtown here because of our historic district. They like that. But it's an unambiguous body of empirical research that suggests historic main streets like Marion and Olympia Avenues and historic neighborhoods more broadly provide cities with important cultural and economic benefits. I wondered, so I have a list of questions that perhaps, because I know I only have 3 minutes, list of contributing structures, if that can be put back on our website. I don't see that, I've looked, can't find it. Given all the recent demolitions, I wondered how many we have of those. Unfortunately, I believe we had about 35 lost after Hurricane Charlie in 2004. We hired a grant person for the city, is that correct?
Yes.
So I wondered if he was able to apply for any of the small matching grants that the state has. And they also have a small category grant. I wondered if we had taken advantage of any of those opportunities. And I wondered if we had ever considered an ad valorem tax exemption for the historic preservation. Because, we are seeing the district go away. And I'm hoping that by having a joint meeting here where this is trying to send the message that it's important to us to maintain our district. And that's pretty much all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak?
Good evening, Frank Desgan. On the agenda items, I just want to say that I don't know much about 2F, but other than that one, I support every item on the agenda. So, and I also want to mention, if you all have not seen I'm sorry, but the cruise line skips my mind now that's coming in here. American, okay. I don't know if you all have seen any, they finally started running ads for the route that includes Punta Gorda. I don't know if you all have seen that, but the one thing they say about Punta Gorda is the preservation, or excuse the historic district, tours of the historic district. That's what they promote, so that's how important it is to me and should be to everybody in this room. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Set my timer. Terry Ziegler, 124 McGregor Street. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm a new resident, but a year-round resident and a registered voter, as well as my wife Deborah is year-round and a registered voter. I just want to comment, my good neighbor Marilyn hit on some of the topics that I support, so if I'm repeating, bear with me. We are recent new members of this beautiful city. We purchased the house on December 30th of 2024. It had suffered severe damage in both Helene and Milton, but we bought it with our eyes wide open. I am still a licensed North Carolina broker, real estate broker. So what I want to point out to that most of you already know, when you buy in the historic district, you buy with the knowledge that it's not only do you have property rights, but you have an obligation. We're caretakers. Someone is going to end up owning this house after we're no longer here. And we want to do all that we can on our part, when I say our, Debbie and mine, to make sure that the structure remains historic. It is in the historic district. I got a letter from my good friend Hank stating the fact. So just real briefly, as I mentioned, we bought it as is. We had to dry it out. We had to get rid of the termites. My other good friend Dawn says stand arm in arm in the house. And then we had to put some appliances back in. We had to get new air conditioning because the flood took out the existing system. bottom line, there's a lot of effort, a lot of heartache, and a lot of money. But again, we bought it with wide open eyes. So basically tonight, I want to lend our support, Debbie and mine, to some items that are on the agenda. I believe that there should be some kind of policy informing new homeowners that, yes, it is an obligation to keep this house up. And unfortunately, I'm running out of time, but I also support the preservation, coming up with a preservation fund. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to come up and speak? Second time, anybody else want to come up and speak? One more time? Okay. Then we'll go to the regular agenda, which is 2A AC Freeman House.
This item is to be a general discussion about what the use of the building will be after it is restored. Anyone is welcome to chime in with their thoughts.
Teresa Desgan, and with all due respect, are we really ready to discuss that at this point when the CDBIA doesn't even have the keys to the place yet? I don't know.
You could certainly defer that conversation if you'd like. It was just suggested that it be on the agenda.
If I may, I think we assumed, and you never should assume anything, that that contract would be back, and that's not on them. I'm not blaming anyone for the reason. Everyone had to go over this contract, and I get it. So I think what probably would be useful tonight is that that contract is out. I'm hearing through the Coconut Telegraph it's going to be back maybe in a week or so. So maybe we could defer this when we know what we're doing, if that makes sense. We don't waste a bunch of time and energy.
TJ, you want to say anything? I'm sorry, we got TJ. Mr. Valdez.
Two separate items.
The use, okay, so you're right, we do have two separate items, so
We
I know
do.
that TJ started walking up here because I know that it's,
Good evening, just,
Okay.
and I'll stay for the last item unless you guys would be willing to switch them, but the contract has been received back from our attorney. I have reviewed it, it's been sent to Donna at the BIA, short for CDBIA, and we should have that back and back to the city, in the city's hands, I would hope possibly the end of this week, if not beginning of next. And then from there, execute the contract, and I don't know how long that'll take, and then permitting, and then just laying out the schedule from there. As far as the use of the Freeman House, none of my business.
thanks TJ. Steven, Mr. Valdez.
Well, I believe it's just as important, probably even more so important, that we decide what we're going to do with it, because we know it's going to be there. So let's carry on with this while we're here.
Yeah, David Perry for the record. Back in 2023, a task force was put together. I was asked for my capacity on the HPAB to represent HPAB on that task force. It was run by Nancy Johnson with Team Punta Gorda. We had probably, I don't know, 4 to 6 workshops and meetings where we brainstormed what we could do with the Freeman House. Post what we thought at that point was going to be a remodel, and then it was decided to mothball it. Part of what came out of all of those meetings was a consensus that a nonprofit should probably be the leader of the pack in determining what to do with the building and managing the building. So you all have, and the clerk has, future use plans for the Freeman House. This document was provided to the city in June 15th of 2023. Nothing occurred with it. Basically, it was the Punta Gorda Historical Society had agreed to take over the building, and it outlined the uses that they thought that they could do with it, and the generation of revenue as a result of that. So I don't think anybody on this council has ever seen this, or even knew that there was a task force that was put together by the city and by Team Punta Gorda to address that. So I think it's all appropriate that you all know it. There was a lot of thought, a lot of brain power, and a lot of people power that went into this. And it just died with the mothballing of the project. So anyway, you can review that. I'm open to questions at any time relative to it. And hopefully it will make some sense.
I think the one, excuse me, John Good. I think the one thing that I'm not saying that a use isn't important, it is, but when we're talking about what we're going to do with the building, what we can do as far as use will be different depending on things like ADA compliance, but it's also an historic structure. So just like the Punta Gorda Women's Club, which by the way looks fabulous, they opened up again after everything, and that's a place where memories for everybody for forever, and it's back open. If you haven't seen it, go look. So Punta Gorda Historical Society runs that.
Yeah.
And that's their, you know, they do all of that. I mean, that's their money. The city doesn't help with any of that at all. So that's my problem with, not a problem, but the wonderful contractors getting together to take it down from 2.1 million, which was the initial cost to restore, down to 1.1, which was to mothball. All of that was idiotic. How did we get to $400,000? Well, a bunch of us said, let's go look at the Freeman House. Let's see what it looks like. And you walk in, past council had not been in that house at all. They're making decisions and never once went through the doors of the Freeman House. I asked them all. I'm not talking about anybody here. I'm talking about prior council. And then, so once people looked at it, we understood that this was doable. So what they're proposing is to make this usable again. Then the use becomes, we're not talking about ADA compliant bathrooms. We're not talking about, if you want to do big events there, you're going to have to do different things. So I guess that's why, let's just move forward with this wonderful gift we're getting from 2.1 million to $400,000 from people in our community that are just dedicated to this. And then this is really important. I agree with you. This was mothballed too, not
Yes.
just the Freeman House. So that's just my take on the use part of it.
Lucille Ponte, just want to add one thing. I know David spent a lot of time, he's going to be very humble about it, but he spent a lot of time on this with these other parties in the community, and many people in the community were very excited about doing this, and then, as you say, it got mothballed 2 years ago. It might be worthwhile for the HPAB to put this on an upcoming agenda for us to discuss as well, David.
Okay.
To try to get, because now we've got new members on the committee who weren't here in 2023, to try to get more input and also to perhaps reconnect with those people who worked so hard with you 2 years ago to see if they can assist in ways such as fundraising and things that we haven't really talked about to try to help defray some of the cost of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to pipe in too. Us on city council, we actually don't have any office space at all. And we are tasked to meet with people all the time, which is absolutely wonderful. But sometimes it's really tough to always find someplace. So we would like to have an idea of having some office space for us as well to utilize inside of there.
And I believe that that was one of the things that's on the office space on the second floor was an option for the city as well.
That's awesome.
So.
And it would be. I could see it decorated for all the holidays
Yes.
and
Yep.
stuff like that. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to see when you're coming into our city as the AC Framing. So thank you for taking that on.
Steve Bellis, we have in front of us an outline bullet pointed on everything that's in here, and I think because David was so intimately involved, I think we should go over this. It's easy, it's readable, and we can all figure out, then we can go do whatever we want later. But we've got the outline bullet points right here, easy read, and I think while we're all here, we should go over it. We seem to be talking around it, but let's do it.
Well, I think probably they need to digest it and then come back with
It would
something.
have been nice to have given this to us
Yeah,
before, so we could have done it for tonight and be prepared for it.
Unfortunately, I was in Costa Rica, and quite frankly, I had to look through my records to find it, so I apologize.
So I appreciate it,
Yeah.
that this is, but yeah, I love to digest
Yeah.
it and,
Yes.
help you.
Yeah.
But I think for you taking the task on and all of you, I think is a wonderful idea. I don't know how everybody else feels about it.
Janine Polk for the record. So it's funny because a lot of what I wrote down today in my notes, rental, ladies' teas, birthdays, baby showers, wedding showers, Christmas parties, same exact stuff.
Good,
So-
good minds think alike, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so do bad minds as well.
Yeah, I have somehow seen this already before, and, but I would defer to the rest of the council if you need more time to digest it, so we can talk about it again.
Janice, Melissa?
Well, I just think it's great that you guys have put all this work in, and we've been asking ourselves what's the best use, and you've done so much on that, and I'm really grateful for what you've done, and I'm excited about the use of the building. And it is a beautiful building. Anything we can do to have one slightly larger room, I've seen it, and I know there's a lot of smaller rooms, but in the front, there might be a way to have, like for some of these showers or little events, any way we can keep it open, one room a little larger than the others, could be helpful. And we can't change it too much, I understand that, but it's something to keep in mind.
As far as talking about it tonight, I have no problem talking about it, but I think we're a little, we have a template right here, so you've
Right.
already done the work. So I think it's let's get them in, get the work started,
Yep.
and then we can all kind of digest this. And then obviously, I would have some personal questions too. That having these events and whatnot are great, but I like what you said, having a nonprofit that's going to head that up, because less time for city staff. Who's going to make sure the doors are open? Who's going to make sure the rent or the birthday parties are paid for? And I think those are all devils in the details that we can get down to that we wouldn't even be able to discuss tonight.
Well, and complete transparency, I'm the vice president of the Historic Preservation, Historical Society.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is we have that capability right now because we do it with the History Park.
Love it.
We've turned all those vacant buildings into nonprofit income producers. We've now got American Cruise Lines adding 3 cruises this next year, and they say it's the #1 destination. So if we can incorporate the Freeman House in with that as well, in terms of the touring system, we've got something.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the Freeman House is the focal point for most of our marketing that we do for the city of Punta Gorda. And to put it to out to pasture is a sin.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Perry, do you have a copy that you could give to TJ as well?
yeah. Here you go, TJ.
Thank you.
Janine Polk for the record again, and I know a lot of people are concerned about upkeep, and I was looking at how large it is. That's why I gave that printout to you. It's just about 2,000 square feet, and when we appraise properties, it's $2 a square foot for upkeep. It's really not a lot of upkeep once it's done.
If I may, I did ask, and this is 3 years ago, I said, what did it cost? What was the yearly cost for the Freeman House to the city? It was $26,000 a year. Now, the caveat is they didn't take care of it.
Right.
But the point is, that's the number I got.
So the #1 issue is make sure that we maintain it once it gets fixed.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's why you've got to create a revenue stream.
Yes.
Same as we do with the Women's Club,
Yes.
And the train station.
and the train depot, and the History Park.
Right. That's great. I mean, I think we have a template. I think we have the, let them get forward with
Yeah.
starting the repairs, and we come back and visit it. And I think it'd be
Absolutely,
very easy.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
And keep in mind, these ideas are 2 years old now.
Oh, sure.
So,
But they're, honestly, most of them are still valid.
yeah,
Nothing different.
okay.
We ready to move on? Okay, the next one is the ordinance city policy to protect historic homes. Okay, so the summary of this is creating policy that when a historic home comes on the market, it comes with a caveat informing the buyer of its significance and adds an obligation to maintain its historic integrity. Clarify what homes are on the historic registry, contributing versus non-contributing, and what criteria should be used, other strategies to communicate with homeowners, and strategies to strengthen Punta Gorda's identity as a historic city. These are all great things to talk about. Who wants to start?
Go ahead.
Teresa.
Teresa Desgan for the record. When I suggested submitting that for today's meeting, that is my biggest concern, because we should have started this 20 years ago after Hurricane Charlie, because now here we are, we continue to lose homes because there's no policy or whatever to determine this is a historic home, just like Mr. Ziegler said. He knew what he was doing going in, and so I think our realtors, and somehow we need to let people know when they commit to an historic home that it is a commitment and an obligation and a responsibility. So that's my reason for adding that to this agenda.
And David Perry, for the record, I've also been a real estate broker for 40 years in Florida. I mainly do commercial, so the residential forms are a little old to me. But I'm 90-some% sure that there is a form that a disclosure for an historic property in the resident. If it's in an historic district, there should be disclosure. I will check our records at Michael Saunders tomorrow relative to that, but I'm pretty sure it's not being used, and shame on the realtors and shame on everybody involved.
Thank you, David, because just as Terry had said, you know, when you purchase an historic property in an historic district, you are a caretaker of that property. Properties don't get to be 100 years old because they got torn down and no one took care of them, right? So that's one thing. Private property rights and issues like that, I don't know. That's kind of a concern in the back of my head. How do we make that happen? There are things like preservation easements in perpetuity. So when I said I'd take the Freeman house, when I lost my home in Charlie, down to 620 Marion, I proposed a preservation easement in perpetuity, which means the outside of the house, I would maintain that, and if I did sell the house, that easement went with the new buyer, which means they couldn't do anything to the outside of the house, much less tear it down. And then, just to be clear, inside of a home, you can do whatever you want. If you want to just take the little rooms out so that you can have a bigger area, you can do that. These preservation easements are for the outside of the home, and that you're not only taking that obligation on, you are putting it in to the future too. So that's something that I think that I totally agree. You know, you assume that people want to be there for a certain reason, and we shouldn't make assumptions like that. We really shouldn't. And so I agree, we need to do something. What it is, I don't know, but at least we're getting to the start of it. And David, you as a realtor, and you know, everybody has a different set of tools, right? You know something I don't know, you guys know something we don't know. And at least to have these conversations and think about what we're going to do going forward for the board, community. I just love having this conversation.
David, do you think if they don't have anything for disclosure, either way, do or don't, maybe we should contact the Board of Realtors to make sure that we can either get it put on or to make sure that their classes...
Absolutely, because they need to know whether or not, if they're buying a house that's on the contributing list or on, you know, where these rules impact them, they need to know that up front when they're buying it.
Right.
That's why I run the commercial division, I don't do residential, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that disclosure somewhere in the past.
And disclosures aside, it's all about enforcement.
Right.
So, you know, you can disclose all you want, but how do you enforce it? And I think that's when the city comes into play, you know, and says, buyer beware, right? It's always buyer beware because did I read all the statements when I bought a house? Probably not.
Right.
So, but it comes down to then the city being able to enforce that, of which, you know, we put in place.
Right.
Just one thing, because of after Ian, and I was looking at a home in the historic district. I was just, you know, I've always liked the little house, and I'm thinking, oh, okay. So I go over and I'm looking at it, and this is when it was right after you had to disclose if it had been flooded. It had been flooded. There was damage from Ian on the roof. None of that was disclosed. And I just took the realtor aside and I said, listen, you know, thanks for showing me the house. I was really interested. I'm not now, but I believe that you should have disclosed this. This should be there, and it wasn't. So that's another thing we have to look at. I mean, and how do we enforce that? I don't know.
Teresa Deskin again with HPAB. So I took the liberty of reaching out to Cedar Key, Mount Dora, and Fort Myers Beach about what their policies are, and they've got some good ideas and good policies, and so I'm thinking that maybe we can reach out as a group or just assign one person to reach out to them and look into those and learn by example. So that was,
Good idea.
thank you. So I do have some stuff here. I don't want to waste time with it.
So would you like to take that on?
I can try.
Might as well. I mean, if you're up for it, I mean, if that's something,
I can try. I have talked to a person in each one of those communities and then done some research on the internet. So yeah, I guess I am happy to follow up on that.
Awesome.
You know, obviously we'd all support you too, but I mean, if it's something you've already kind of got the ball rolling.
Yes.
Please let us know when and where you need staff assistance on that, because we're happy to help you as well.
Thank you. That would be very helpful. I really appreciate that.
Don, I know you had concerns about what was on the historic registry or not, is that correct?
I got a couple of things. I've already talked about well, we haven't discussed the Florida Senate statute, which is the structural engineers reports, which I think we can do really quick here.
Let's do it.
So we have in our bylaws, thank you, Lucille knows, it says that if anyone comes to us for a CA, a certificate of appropriateness, for a request for demo, and by the way, we just, we can't say yes or no. All we can do is recommend what zoning brings to us, and then whatever. We can override it, it goes to you guys, you all know what's going on there. So we have been frustrated for a year now about these structural engineers reports we're getting. We have to have them. We can't even entertain a property owner coming to us for a demo recommendation if you do not give us a structural engineers report. So for a year, we're getting reports that are really not structural engineers reports. We spent a majority of our last meeting talking about that, the frustrations about that. The whole board is frustrated with it, not just me. So then right after the meeting, one of our neighbors said, Dawn, take a look at this Florida state statute. We need to add this to, or at least say this is what we mean by a structural engineer's report, right? You've got to be at this standard. That's what we request. I do not think, and of course, I think our city attorney would probably I've been asking for a week or so about this. I don't think we need to change what we're doing. I just think we need to define what a structural engineer's report means to us. And if we do that, then all the nonsense goes away. We're not wasting our time, we're not wasting your time, we're not wasting citizens' time. And I think it's a fair thing to ask, and I don't think it's a big stretch, and I think we could do it tomorrow, honestly. So that was my biggest thing for tonight. I thought this was a no-brainer.
Yeah, because I think it's important to note that most of the structural engineering, so-called structural engineering reports we get, say the 50-50 rule applies, and they don't understand that it doesn't apply.
It doesn't.
So people are paying for these reports that are meaningless to begin with.
Right.
And oftentimes $1,500.
Right.
So.
Lucille Ponte, just one other thing, in our last meeting, I can't remember who, somebody on the city staff, on the city staff had recommended the idea that when the applications come in, we need to make certain that the person who is actually providing the report when we do get it is truly a structural engineer. I think we're getting a lot of people who, my brother-in-law is an engineer, so he's going to write a nice report for me here, and it's kind of basic, and it doesn't really say very much. And so we have to make a decision based on what's before us, and sometimes it's very little, or something, as David pointed out, almost meaningless, because the people who are writing it are coming from other coasts and just writing something up and saying, well, the homeowner told me this, or the homeowner told me that. But I do think that the city staff had indicated that part of this is just through the vetting process without having to change any rules, because it already requires a structural engineering report, that we actually just make sure that the person who is providing this is indeed a structural engineer.
In the state of Florida.
And that does not require any change of rules. That's already in our rules.
And
So
Janine Pope, for the record, I'm sorry, excuse me, and I mean, I noticed in some cases it's just a letter, and that's not a report. So you actually need a structural engineer's report. If you have your home looked at by somebody when you sell it, and they give you a thick report of everything on it, and that's what I would expect from a structural engineer's report. They actually looked underneath and all that.
I think, to me, the biggest thing about the structural engineer's report, which is why it's in there, why we have to have it, if you go back to like Charlie, that was wind-driven. So you got homes that were twisted on foundations, you have roofs coming off. You also had the city going door to door and doing assessments. Is this uninhabitable? Is this condemned? We've done none of that since this. This was storm-driven damage. We've done none of that.
we need to call Ron up.
Well, we've discussed this, but let me just finish for a minute. So when we're talking about a structural engineer's report, we're talking about the soundness of the home as a whole. All these other things, which we're getting in these supposed structural engineer's reports, which they are not, is saying things like we've got termites, is saying things like, you know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Now, are those damages in these homes? Of course they are. You buy an old property, they're all going to have it. That doesn't mean that you can't restore it, doesn't mean you can't rehab it, doesn't mean that it's not doable. That is not a home that needs to be condemned. That's not a home that cannot be restored. The problem there, it becomes for the homeowner, and we can't address their fiscal situation. You know what I mean? So all of this stuff is, for the most part, all these homes we're talking about, it's doable. That's not the point. We can't dictate the financial, we can't dictate what people put into their homes. So the structural engineer's report, at least if we get there, that's the first step in my mind.
So Debbie, I have a question. Like, I actually had a house that was destroyed from Charlie. It was an L-shaped house, but from the outside, you could see a gap like this. So do you think if you can physically see something that you know the house is compromised, do you still want the residents still to go through a structural engineering report?
Yes,
If
because
it's yes, then that's
because
fine.
seriously, you go around town and look. So people after Helene, you know, they started, you know, cutting things out, you know, because they needed to get the water out, they needed to dry it out. Then we got hit with Milton 2 weeks later, and some little thing like that. I restored the bank downtown, 133. I restored 620, which was a 1915 home. And so you know, this is not an esoteric question for me. This is not some philosophy. It is true. You can do pretty much what you want to do if you want to put that money into it. We can't dictate that. So when you talk about a structure, if someone says, oh, there's a hole in the wall over here, it's like, come on, that's not structurally making that home unsound.
David Perry for the record. There is cases where it's clear that the house has been totally destroyed. You can tell by the pictures, and we've had a couple of homes that have come before us, and we've like, yeah, we don't need a structural engineer report. It's a loss.
Right.
So there is an exception to that rule. But for the most part, we can't rule on these demo permits unless we have a structural engineer.
Yeah, I have to say I'm astounded that we're at 2025 and some of these things like this haven't been in place. How is that? But secondly, we made a vote not long ago about a couple of houses that were badly damaged, and the structural engineering report was holding things up, but it was so obviously damaged, we ended up voting to go ahead and allow it to be destroyed and replaced with a very similar looking building. And that was part of the deal.
Right.
So,
but with David Perry, again for the record, what we're tasked with is obeying the law when it comes to us. And if they don't have a structural engineering report, we have no choice but to vote a certain way. You then can override us because that's your authority. But the bottom line is we need that structural engineering report to be able to do our job at first. Because it's just delaying the ultimate decision to the homeowner, which isn't fair either.
Right.
You know?
right, but you said that there were some that were so obviously destroyed that you...
Yes, and we could clearly vote on that because there's no point, if there's no building left, there's no need for a structural engineer.
If I will just interject though, we still needed the structural engineer's report.
To
do that. So that is what we are tasked with, and Lucille brought this up at the very beginning a year ago. We cannot even entertain that if we are not provided a structural engineer's report by our bylaws. That's it. So we're just putting it out there. And I think the easiest thing to do is just go with this. That's Florida state statute. This is the criteria. And we might get real reports. And as David said, we're not the hysterical society. Well, you didn't say that. I'm saying it.
We're not trying to hang you up.
No, we're not. But we've got to work with what we got, what we're charged to do, and you know, and we've been dealing with structural engineers reports that weren't structural engineers reports. But he's correct. If this building looks like we didn't make a big stink out of it, but after a year, all of us feel really uneasy. We need to have clarification on this.
And just to be clear, when you say the law, It's a policy.
Florida statute.
It's Florida statute, it's a law.
Well, let me kind of pipe in here.
Mhm.
Are you guys saying that this Florida statute here, that it mandates being a structural engineer?
No, what we're saying is our bylaws for this board
And the ordinances of our.
and the ordinances of chapter 26, and we're here because we have a National Register district.
Yeah.
If we didn't do that in, 1988 to 1991 when we got it, this board wouldn't exist. By the state of Florida, this board has to exist because we have a National Register district.
Right.
So you got stuck with us, basically. So now, what we're saying is in our bylaws and chapter 26, it states, and I wish I had it right in front of me, that we cannot even entertain someone asking for a demo permit from us, from a contributing structure, without a structural engineer's report. So our hands are tied.
So what does this statute?
This
have to
clarifies
do
what
with
a
you're
structural
saying?
engineer is.
No, it doesn't. What this statute does, so let me give you an example here in a minute.
Oh,
So,
we're gonna argue.
let me do it like this. David, if I'm not mistaken, I heard you say that you're a real estate agent.
Broker,
You're a broker,
yeah.
but are you permitted to sell homes?
Yeah,
Why?
because I'm a real estate broker for both commercial and
Right.
residential.
If
I just specialize in commercial.
You specialize in commercial. If I am a realtor, but I'm not a broker, can I still specialize in commercial sales?
You would, most realtors don't because there's a distinction.
But I could, right?
Yeah,
I
you
could
could.
sell nothing, I'm sorry, I could be an agent for a buyer or a seller in just commercial property.
Correct.
So you're a broker who's, to me, you can own the corporation, you can own the organization, you're you're above just a typical realtor, right?
Mhm.
Here's what this statute says. So the Florida Board of Professional Engineers sets the standards for what an engineer is. Petroleum engineer, mechanical engineer, whatever type of engineer, astrophysic engineer, whatever. They have to take certain examinations to be a member of the Florida Board of Professional Engineers. But if you want to be recognized as a specialist in structural engineering,
Thank you.
you have to somehow apply to the Florida Board of Professional Engineers and take this 16-hour course,
Thank you.
and then you will be determined to be an expert, a specialist in the field of structural engineering.
Because that's what it delineates.
But this does not mandate.
It
you
doesn't
have to
mandate.
Be, no, ma'am, listen. But this does not mandate you have to be a specialist in order to be a structural
Okay,
engineer. Our
okay.
code doesn't say that either.
Okay, we're gonna parse words here, because, go ahead.
Well, but that's
no,
the
no,
law.
No, let's go ahead here. Because what it says is the board shall establish minimum requirements to receive recognition through this program. The board must recognize any licensed professional engineer who has successfully passed the National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying Structural Engineering 16-hour PE structural examination. What I'm saying is that I don't even understand why you have a problem with this. I'll be real.
I'm just telling you what the law is.
And, well, listen, we're the municipality, and we decide what are we going to accept as a structural engineer's report. And I think that's important. I think it's doable, and I think it's easy. And this is, and I don't even know why we're arguing about it.
Well, but I need you to understand.
I do understand what you're
No,
saying.
you
I don't agree with your
Because
argument.
the law and our code does not mandate you have to take this course in order to be a
I
structural
didn't
engineer.
say that, but that's my point. We're asking, see, let's go back to the original
If you're-
ask. I'm asking for this to be part of the clarification of what is a structural engineer's report to us. I don't need a landscape architect giving me a structural engineer's
Well,
report.
I would agree with that.
Which is, by the way, some of what we've gotten. So it's that bad, and I know you don't understand that, and there's no reason you would. You're not dealing with this every month. We are. My point is, this clarification, I think, is an easy do, it's an easy ask, and we don't really have to get into all of this. You know, what I'm saying is, that's my point. That is my point. We are clarifying what is a structural engineer for these purposes when we're talking about a CA for demolition in the city of Punta Gorda.
Defining what a structural engineer is different
than trying to say this statute applies to.
Okay, then you tell me, because let's go ahead and have this argument, because I'm passionate about it, because it's a year of crazy right now. You tell me what we're supposed to do then, because we got people that I don't even know what engineering degree they've got. They're signing reports that are not structural engineers reports. They're not even called reports. They put a stamp on it, and we're supposed to use that, and we're supposed to govern that way. That really, really bothers me. I think this is easy, I think it's doable, and it would solve a lot of our problems. And that's why I'm so aggressive with you right now, because,
Well,
you know.
I mean, you can be as aggressive as you want, but the law is the law.
And-
So there's only two ways to change the code. You can do it by referendum, or you can do it by ordinance.
This is
That
not a
sets the
change of-
standards of how you define what structural
This
engineering
is not a change of the code, and that's my point, which you keep ignoring. This is a clarification of what is a structural engineer's report. We already have the code saying we have to have a structural engineer's report.
But what is it?
But what
This
is
is a
it?
clarification of what that means in
Then
the
you
city of
guys have to
Concord.
figure out, council and you guys have to figure out how to define what a structural engineer's report. But you reference the statute, and the statute has nothing to do with the report. It doesn't.
Because a structural engineer could be a structural engineer on their own without going through that, I think is what the course, right?
Okay, then how do we define that for our board? That's the question. I thought this was an easy way to define it.
It seems like we're arguing or not talking about the one word, Steve Valdez for the record, is the word certified. And if it's just certified, well then, under the Florida statute, it means you hadn't taken that 16-hour course. So it's just the word certified needs to be enforced.
Well, look, the law is the law.
Debbie likes
Well,
to
if it was a certified structural engineer, he would have, i.e., taken the 16-hour course. That's all we're asking.
I could be a realtor for 30 years and do the same type of job as David does
Well,
here.
that's
He's
like
been a
saying,
broker.
I'm a Mercedes mechanic, but I can't work on a Ford or
I
a
agree
Ford.
with you.
Why don't we let our building guy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there we go.
yeah, Bronca House, the building official. Well, I'm trying to help you out, a PE, which is a licensed engineer. The vast majority of PEs are actually civil engineers. What the attorney is trying to explain to you to be a structural engineer actually is a one step up. You can go out and design a 20-story building from the foundations through that roof as a PE, and you could actually only be a civil engineer. That is allowed. So I think you're kind of getting hung up on a little bit of what the structural portion
No,
of it means. but-
David Perry, for the record, I think we're getting hung up on is the fact that we've been getting reports when we get demo permits that aren't normal reports. And we don't like the looks of them. They smell, they don't look right, they don't taste right, they're not right.
I can appreciate that, and I
And-
appreciate
but
what you're
they're coming
saying.
from you guys, to us.
Well, they're
and
coming from a PE, so
Yeah,
you would have to
but they're in
argue
the
with.
package.
But you would have to argue with that PE because he is putting his professional license on the line
Yeah.
to write that report.
Right.
You would be really hard pressed to overcome what he has written. If he says it's structurally sound,
But
then
they're not saying that. They're saying at the end that it's over the 50-50 rule, and that's how they're.
well, I don't know how he can make that determination, to be honest with you.
They did
The
all of
PE should be making the determination whether it's actually structurally sound or not. For the substantial damage determination, that literally has to come through the building department to be done.
Okay, I'm gonna interject this,
Wait.
because we did discuss this at length, and you know this. And that is, it does go through your departments, and this is what we get in our packet. And you will admit that not all of these reports are reports, and there's not something we should be relying on. So I'm just trying to make it easier, and I'm not blaming anybody, but it's really important that we just clean this up. That's the end of it.
So, Debbie Lux for the record. From what I'm hearing is you have a consensus you'd like to add certified for the structural engineer for the record so that you can actually have somebody. Is that what I'm understanding from every one of you? Is that you just want the word? So I guess that's what we have to say is they're asking for us to add certified into it so that they know that they have the proper person doing the structural engineering report.
But I think what Ron's saying is that may not exist. You could be a civil engineer and
No.
still have that.
It does
Yeah, I
exist.
mean, you could be a structural engineer, but I'm saying a PE is of multiple different kinds
Multiple
of engineer. And
PEs,
most
so-
of your
yeah.
PEs are civil engineers. They didn't go one step further and get that structural engineering degree or take the classes or pass that test.
Yeah.
But a PE as a civil engineer or a PE as a structural engineer, as far as the building department is concerned, they can design the exact same things. And I understand what you might be saying about a report that you would read from a PE and think it's not 100% kosher. But again, unless you brought him against his peers and his peers decided that that report was not, you know, correct, they're the only ones that can decide that. Even as a building official, I can question, I can actually ask for peer reviews, but I can't actually say an engineer's report is wrong or correct. I have to go by what he tells me. He is the PE. His license is on the line for it.
Then let's go back to another problem, which is we are not inspecting homes. And I understand we did not want to put a burden on people that have already gone through 2 floods, whether it's still Ian or whatever. But what we haven't done after Helene and Milton, which I'm going to call Hilton, if it just shortens it all up, is we have not gone, and I've asked the question, and I've gotten the answer, so let's clarify that. We have not gone to the homes to look and see if they're uninhabitable. We have not condemned a home that I know of.
Okay. So what we are doing is we are canvassing Punta Gorda, and we are going home by home. That is a taunting task.
When did it start?
Right? We started probably about 3 months ago.
Okay, good.
Okay. And right now we're working on a repetitive loss list, which is about 213 properties. On our historic list, you got to understand, there's 560 properties. And for the information I have right now, I can determine about 70% of them have been damaged. You know how many of them actually applied for a permit? About 20%.
A lot of people just
So
want
I'm just trying to get you to understand, when we are canvassing and we are going door to door, we are talking to homeowners, trying to get them to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, one house, you're talking 15, 20 man hours just to get one person to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, we've been having good success, but it's a long process, because at the same time, I still have to run the building department. I still have to take care of our contractors. We still have to take care of our inspections. We still have to do our plan review. But we are doing this on a daily basis.
Well, thank you, because I didn't get that answer at the last meeting or the meeting before. Yeah, I'd asked, are we doing it? And I got no, we hadn't done it.
No, we have been
So
doing
now
it.
I've said 3 months, and I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
I mean, I have somebody I've been using for my public corner. She'd be happy to come up here and show you the paperwork that we
I appreciate
have.
that answer, because that was not, the last time I asked, it was no, we haven't done that, and no, we didn't do it. That was the answer.
But where'd you get that answer from?
At our historic board meeting, I don't know if it was you or someone else, but I'll go back over the videos and it's right there.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not going out to specific historic structures and say, oh, this needs to be demo, or this can't be, I'm not doing that, but we are going house by house, address by address, to see what flood damage was done, to see what permits are needed, to see if there were permits there or not, and if they didn't apply for the permits, to encourage them to actually come in and get their permits. I mean,
Yeah, making some assessments.
we made a special application to help the residents out. It's very easy to use. They could do over the counter. It's extremely cheap, and that's what we're trying to encourage right now. But we are going house to house.
Good.
Okay, great.
Okay, Janine Pohl for the record. So the whole idea behind this is to slow down people from just, okay, I don't want to deal with the flooding, I don't want to deal with this house, I don't have enough money to put into it. Okay, so we're holding them up, okay, for X amount of days until someone can move it, right? Someone maybe come along and say, hey, I'd like that house, let me move it onto another report isn't for showing you that, hey, we're going to demolish it right away necessarily. I mean, you have some people that are like, listen, I'd like for someone to use it if they think they can. So structurally, is it sound enough to move it from one place to another, right? Just to preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone come before you to do that? Has
No.
anyone said, I'd like to give this, and if they did, how long would it be? What's the process?
If I can say, this is after Charlie, this is what was going on. And as a matter of fact, Tallahassee called us the movinest town in Florida, because we were moving properties. And what would happen is that if someone wanted to move, and they, someone that wanted to get rid of the house, and they were willing to give it to someone to move it to their property, then there would be conversations between the donor and the recipient. Who's going to pay for the move? We would ask questions like, well, it would cost $60,000 to demo, so maybe it would cost $60,000 to move. So these are kind of conversations that we tried to facilitate as a preservation board 21 years ago. That's how we did it then. And setting up people to meet other people and figure this stuff out. Homes are going to be demoed. I've got screens and doors and all kinds of stuff all over the historic district from my 1915 home because I was told it was condemned and I had to demo it. So what did we do? Went around to all the neighbors. You need windows, you need doors, you need screens, you need a porch. What do you need? This is yours. And so we suggested at that time that we could, it's all about communication and setting up a place for people to go to find connections for like-minded people to do what they can do. And we need to probably try to promote that more. The suggestion was that, that the city would be the receiving site is the history park.
Right.
That wasn't the history park. That was a receiving site for homes that we needed to move that people wanted to demo. And that's how they got to the history park.
Right.
So this isn't our first rodeo. What we don't have right now is, I don't think, all of these historic boards are doing wonderful work, wonderful work. We don't have any kind of thing at the city, which I would call, come in and talk to somebody about what can I do? Can you set me up with somebody else? Do you know this guy over here? Do you know this cat over there? Do you know anyone I can go talk to? Because I think people, why would they pay $60,000 to demo if they could just pay $60,000 to move the house, 3 blocks down? Flint and Doyle are still the moving people, I think. It's gotten more expensive in 21 years.
And would it need to come into compliance as far as the flood height? Does anybody know that answer? If I were to move a historical structure, would I have to take it to another site and then put it up to the 11?
Probably. Yeah.
Ron knows.
No, it's gonna, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's cost in that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you move that structure to a new site, it would have to meet the flood requirements.
Charlie Noble for the record. The estimate I got from Jaha was about $200,000 to move a home.
Just to move it?
Just to move it.
Raising them is about the same amount.
And Elevate Florida was a nothing burger, which did nothing for anybody. Seriously, 3 people got Elevate Florida. So that was a nothing burger, and that's what we were telling everybody after the storm. Please go and apply to Elevate Florida. So that's not even an option. Let's admit what didn't work. That's my point. We're a year in. Elevate Florida did not work for anybody. Well, 2 people maybe that I know of.
Was that 2 historic?
Excuse me?
2 historic properties? got
On
out?
Dolly, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, TJ Thornberry for the record. I wasn't sure if you're still allowing comment on agenda items, so thank you. When we went through the struggle on Chastain, one good thing that came out of that was we got together, we walked the neighborhood, we walked the neighborhood together. And I think it was very obvious, or at least it was to me, that you can't just broad stroke every house. And that was part of the reason I was so passionate about the 111 Chastain house, because you had a 1951 slab on grade home that over time somebody put a front porch on it, put a hip roof on the rest of the house, and made it look historic. Rachel and staff was awesome, and we came to the determination that basically it was just arbitrarily put on the local registry. It had no significance, it had no contributing factors. And that's why I fought so hard to why waste another $1,500 of my owner's money when demo was out of them after 7 times. They had water coming into their house and the finished floor was lower than the street. There was no other option. And so, and finally, we're to the point now where we're going to be submitting a permit. There was a lot of design revisions, but it's happening. And what's going to take its place is an elevated home, craftsman style, that's actually going to fit better into the historic criteria than the old home did. So my point is, after that process, I put together, okay, there's a problem here. Let's be part of the solution. So I put together a draft list of criteria that I thought would be a good thing for the HPAB, like a tool to have to say, okay, Does this home meet this criteria? Does it meet this? All the way down the list. Check, check, check. No, maybe so. Because we know there's a lot of gray areas, and that's the problem. When I was asked about the A.C. Freeman house, it was like a no-brainer. Like, no, the demo is not even in the vocabulary. But there are certain circumstances where the homeowner has rights too, and I get the understanding with the engineering reports, and some of them might be a little bit thin compared to others. But how do we then set that criteria? And that's another thing that we can add to that. So if staff doesn't have it still, I will resend what I created then as just kind of an idea starting point based on our experience to get those two projects demoed. And again, I hope that I've shown you guys that I'm all about the historic district, and I'm all about our historic charm. But there are some areas, and especially gray areas, that we have to consider otherwise.
I think, TJ, that's also where we were talking about that you can keep the property taxes by going up, I think, was it at 10%, 15%? You can build it a little bit bigger, and then you keep it looking, like a historic home, even though it's not, and it's actually best for all of us.
There was an opportunity where we could fast track. Yes, we discussed the fast track possibility of if you meet the footprint or maybe just a certain percentage bigger, we'll fast track your demo and the rebuild. Unfortunately, just like the lease with the Freeman house, same thing in the private sector. There's design considerations, there's distance, and things just take time. So I would much rather be halfway into rebuilding that house now. And I realize it's been longer than I anticipated, but I still believe in the plight because otherwise you'd be still looking at a house that literally has broken windows and way more blight than what you see. And we're trying to maintain the grass, but it would be much worse than you see as a vacant lot right now. And what you're going to see in its place, I think we would all be happy with in our historic district. And the other side of the coin, and Ron knows, some of these houses, if you were to raise them 8 feet in the air, what did you just do to the historic charm? What did you just do to the character? And that's another problem. Like as we did in our walk, there were some houses we looked at and we said, yeah, I could see that house up on a higher stem wall, and it'd still be charming and have its historic character. But then that house, that slab on grade house, I mean, what's that going to look like 8 feet in the air on a new stem wall? So there's those considerations as well, because back in the day, we didn't plan for the floods, unfortunately. So, thanks.
Thank you.
I don't have an answer on the engineer thing, and I'm not going to leave here without an answer to that because I think it's important. I don't know how long I'm not putting you down. I just don't know, how long you've thought about this. I think this is doable. I'm going to stress it, and then I'm going to shut up. I hope we could get this done tonight, but.
So here's what I'll tell council. This statute relates to obtaining a certain certification or certain elevated criteria or elevated acronym behind your name. It doesn't apply to the contents that go into a structural engineer's report. So whether it's council, whether it's the board, and I love TJ's idea where you guys may have to come up with your own criteria. Does their report indicate A? Does it indicate B? Does it indicate C? Or whatever it may be on how you guys evaluate these engineering reports. But from a legal perspective, you don't need the acronym behind it in order to submit the report.
And just to be clear, because I was trying to fast track this. Now you're talking about we got to go into the whole LDR situation. We're going to have to go into chapter 26. We're going to have to go into all of this. And government is glacial. So basically, if we don't try to do something circular here, we're looking at rewriting those land development regulation guidelines, and we could be talking, let's just be conservative, 18 months to have it go through all the processes it needs to go through. That's what I was trying to avoid.
If I may, so what I'm looking at with this reminds me of, you know, you're an RN, you have, you know, your license as an RN, but you decide to do that elevated and have the BSM behind you or whatever the case is. I don't think that you're still getting an RN that is supplying you with that care. They just went to a little more schooling and they have some more acronyms behind them. But you still have that RN status for what their job scope should be. And I think that's what the point of this is that we have those engineers that have the job scope. Okay, so again, defining what that job scope, or making sure their license is under A, B, and C is fine. But this here is almost somebody that just wants to take a little extra course and have something else on their business card. I don't think we could actually enforce this, because then I'm afraid we get into a legality of, again, like what he was saying is, they already have it, they already have their license, so now we're gonna press them to take what realistically is an optional course, and I don't think that we can do that. We have the engineers that are coming through. Obviously, if they're, do they go through Ron first and then come to you? So they don't, he's shaking his head, okay. So they're coming to you in a packet, so then obviously.
We get the packet from staff.
Okay, but he's shaking his head that they're not vetting it. So in other words, who's vetting the engineer? That's
No
the
one.
biggest question.
No one's
Okay.
vetting the engineers.
Okay.
That's the problem.
So then maybe so how do you vet an engineer? So you look up his license, but I don't think you can premise it just on this FVPE, that's what I'm saying.
You can't, and I'm sorry, Debbie Lux, for the record. You know, I go through this as a dentist. You know, when I got my license, I could do anything in dentistry. But tell you, if I was gonna do a root canal, you know, forget it. I'm not the expert in that. So I understand where you're saying this, but I love the idea of criteria, maybe between Ron and Rachel, without changing the LDRs or whatever that's gonna take 18 months. Is there any wording that we can put in there that has these criterias prior to going there that might make it work?
Yeah, at the current time, the engineer letters do not come through the building department. They go through planning and zoning. I have not
Okay,
seen
then
I have not seen a single one yet, yeah.
Sorry, Rachel, I think is.
Calling you out for.
I would be happy to help though. I just
called
haven't
you out. Sorry,
I
Ron.
haven't
I
been
thought you
involved
were
in the process, but I would be happy to help.
Thank
yeah.
you, Ron.
So Rachel.
Rachel Berry, zoning official for the record. And so yes, we can just update the template for the application and say structural engineer's report, including A, B, C, D, E.
And that, you guys would work out with Rachel to put into your template then as what you're looking for.
That's kind of what we talked about at the last meeting, but what I heard from Rachel and what I heard from staff was it had to go through our attorney to vet that.
Yeah.
So that's why it came up tonight. We're all in the same place, everyone knows what everyone said, and we can move forward with moving in the same direction, I guess, right?
We were asking if we legally could require that they have to have that additional certification. That's what we were clarifying.
Right, and we didn't get that answer before tonight.
This afternoon, we spoke about that statute, and further down in that statute, there is a paragraph there that says you don't have to have that to do structural engineering.
So just have criteria.
Legally, you can't require them to be a member of this
Correct.
program. However, it would probably be a great idea on your form to say, submit your resume, submit your years of, whatever criteria
Like an
you want to
appraiser.
put in.
Right.
Is that?
And also too, because we are a municipality and we make up our rules as far as preservation and how we go forward, which is why I brought up the LDRs, right? We can do all these things, you know, but that's going through that whole process. If there was a faster way, that was my point, and I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah. So you can make that happen, Rachel.
At the next HPAB meeting, we'll put an agenda item on there so that we can get a consensus of exactly what criteria you guys want to see on there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you.
How's that? That's
Can I
Okay.
just point out one thing?
Progress.
TJ Thornberry for the record. My only concern would be the vast majority of the homes that are built, remodeled, you name it, in our area in Florida are signed and sealed by PE. So we're going to say that you can build a 3-story home on Jamaica Way, but you can't assess an old home
Right.
to a PE. So I just want to
That's why they're gonna
preference
have
that.
Yeah,
criteria.
it's-
Yeah, what they're looking for.
Right.
Well, and I think, just to end the discussion, I think the criteria you're talking about is in that report from the PE, which should be allowed to submit that report, are they adding photos, step-by-step points of things you want answered? That's where I think you're going, not necessarily as long as they're licensed,
Right.
they can do it, it's just a criteria of what you want to see in that report.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe have TJ come to it and help you guys out. Okay, are we on our next one? So, I guess we're gonna go, are we done with all these then? Contributing structures?
Did you want to have any conversation about
Did you want to have any
the,
conversation?
the homes on the historic registry? Rachel,
The homes on the historic register.
can you clarify the process and how are we determining now what homes are on the historic registry?
Rachel Berry, zoning official for the record. I would need to have the code right in front of me to give you the exact specifics, but there's two separate categories. There's one category that, you know, if you're individually listed on the National Register or within the National Register district, I believe that is the category that we can delay the permit for up to 180 days under this set of the LDRs. If it is outside of the National Register district, but it's on the Florida Master Site file, then they fall under the category of they shall be delayed for a period of at least 45 days before they can demo. So there's several different things that go into it now. So we have the 3 historic overlays, the Bethel St. Mark, downtown, the National Register District, and then also any property that's listed on the Florida Master Site file is subject to those CA requirements as well.
Do we have a current list of all of those properties?
I'm working on finalizing that. There were a couple discrepancies when I was comparing National Register, Florida Master Site file to, you know, what we had. So I'm making sure that all of those details are right before I put it out to the public.
And then as soon as that's done, you'll post it on the website?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
And just because I do have the Florida Master Site file here, which you can get online. It shows what's demoed, what's existing. Then you've got this list, which is the only one I got, and I asked for 2. This is the properties that require a CA, which means this is a contributing structure list. I know that this is from 2023, December 2023, which is the old LDRs, because I was trying to clarify, and since my house was on it in 2022 and then was off it in 2023, it was just quick to go look, is my house on it? It's not. So this is a list, a contributing structure list, that was produced after December 2023. So this is not our real contributing structure list, and I don't know where the 2022 one is. I haven't gotten that yet.
So, I have a question though. The LDRs didn't take effect until 2024 officially, so is the 2023 contributing factor is it still in effect because it was done prior to the 2024?
Not that I am aware of. Excuse me, the land development regulations that outlined the local register were in the code that is no longer in effect. And so now we have historic overlays, but we don't have an adopted local register.
So 2023 shouldn't have gone out until after it was adopted in 2024.
It was part of the LDRs that were passed.
But it should have.
So the hearings for the LDRs were at the end of 2023. That's when it was approved, but it didn't go into effect until April of 24 when the comprehensive plan went into effect.
It was approved in October, but this went into effect in December, and then the LDRs didn't go into complete effect until
April 1st,
2024. So there is that lapse of everything inside there. I think what maybe from what I'm hearing is we have the national, we have the state, and then we have the city. Should they all be very close, but then city might have a few more, pros and cons, and maybe our historic preservation board should look at those contributing for our city and say yes or no, and then have some sort of a form that goes out there saying, you were on it, do you want to stay on it, and give the consequences. If you're a historic, you have to follow the historic rules. If you're not on it, you're going to have to follow the 50-50 rule. And then have some sort of, notation. If you didn't respond, then it automatically goes here, something so that everybody is aware that this is going to be the policy, not to have somebody come up and go, I didn't know about it. So we have to have something, written. I think that it's important for each one of our historic board to be a part of that, saying yes or no. Do you think it is contributing or not contributing?
Absolutely. So the letter that we drafted to all the property owners has that on there. If you want to be on the list, respond showing this criteria applies. If you don't want to be on the list, respond saying how you no longer fall under this criteria, and then that would come before HPAB for your approval, and then it would come before council for adoption.
And we've been trying to get these letters out for almost a year. And every time last time we talked in June, those letters were going to go out. And the last couple of HPAB meetings, those letters were going to go out. They still haven't gone out. So I'm just saying, time is of the essence. It's a year. We need to do what we can.
Yeah, we had the letters drafted for the set of LDRs that were in place, but we kind of had to backstep and pivot since the local register was no longer in effect. So we just had to pivot a little bit, but those letters are ready.
Oh, good.
Okay, if you'll indulge me. Yes. Donna Peterman for the record. It's with some trepidation that I want to give you some history. So it was 2018, 2019, when the then council, like a couple of councils ago, took issue with the number of homes that had been added to the list. And the then Historic Preservation Advisory Board, of which I was a member, and I had been a chair for at least 3 years since then, actually spent nearly 2 years going through all the structures and going through what was historically significant, what was architecturally significant, what was a contributing structure, with the idea of lowering the number on the list. And it was especially at the behest of people who lived in PGI who did not want to see, frankly, their homes on the list. So there's only a couple streets like Donna and Maria Court that qualify for that. So I'm just saying this board over time has been involved with reviewing all of these homes with the guidance of the then staff. So you can take that for what it's worth, but we can't say that nobody on this board had anything to do with reviewing properties. And I can give you the names of the people who were on that board at that time. And again, it was architecturally significant. It wasn't just old. So you can't have just a bunch of houses that were built in 1960. They had to be like mid-century modern or something, or in some rarer cases, there were people of historic significance locally who lived there. That was the basis for the list, and the reason that it was held up for years, which I pushed for having it come back to council, it was held up because they wanted the Dover Cole process to be done. And I thought we had, you know, a responsibility to the then council to report back. I got nowhere for 3 years. Thank you.
And you know, as far as if they don't respond, I think the only way you could do that is certified. I mean, you know,
Well,
do you send them out certified to make sure that they came back, you know, somebody did sign, didn't sign? I don't know how big.
That's it. I was told that the last time I brought it up was that it might cost $300, or maybe that was another letter, I don't know.
Yeah.
And at that point I said, I'll pay for it. I just want this done, you know?
Rachel Berry, zoning official. So the way that we are sending out the letters is going to be not certified mail, but the initial letters through, oh my goodness, I just lost the term. It's not certified mail, but you take your list of envelopes to the post office and they stamp it that it's that you do have a letter for all those addresses. Certificate of mailing.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just double the cost of a postage stamp. But yes, there were hundreds of properties on there. So we were trying to avoid sending letters out multiple times. But when it comes to the public hearings to add the properties, if they haven't responded, yes, we will send those letters. There's a time frame that they have to respond within. If they don't, we move forward. Or they can appeal it after the fact to get off of the list. But yeah, there's timelines that they have to reply by.
Good. So we're good with the contributing?
I'm sorry?
We're good with contributing?
I think so.
Yep.
So now we're going to go to the discussion for establishment of a preservation fund. And the summary for this is discussion regarding creating an additional 1/2 mil levy to help with storm repairs of historically designated structures and other financial and policy considerations.
Teresa Deskin for the record. I submitted that for discussion, and I did not mean 1/2 mil, I meant 1/10 mil.
Oh,
Thank you.
which is a big difference.
Yes. Just a bit. So, my husband straightened me out on that.
That he did.
And you're saying 1/10 mil for the whole city?
Correct.
So you're saying 1/10 mil for the whole city for somebody's home?
Well,
In the
if I
downtown
may,
area.
we're talking about a preservation fund. So there's all kinds of, we're not even close to an answer for this yet about what would be permitted with this fund. But you've got a preservation board that has no teeth and we have no budget. So if you're taking the city as a whole and you say 1/10 of a mil, that would probably give you a preservation budget of $500,000. Now, you can take it down to less than that. But that's going to have to be discussed in what we decide we do as what we're going to do as a preservation board, what we're going to do moving forward. I think it's a great idea, but how we, what we're going to do with it, I think at least let's discuss the idea of that. Because like you said, if someone wants to move a house but they don't have the money, let's say you can take my house, but I don't have the money to do it. As a matter of fact, I don't have the money to tear it down either. So you want to take my house? Maybe we can say, okay, city will throw in $20,000. I don't know what that means, but at least we could have a place to start about the responsibility for our historic district, how we tout historic Punta Gorda and use it all over the place, and it's going to be gone if we don't make some hard decisions. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if you all know, but I know David knows this because you're a realtor. If you look at what the homes are going for now, and you want to talk about your tax base, it's been halved in our historic district. A house that you could have sold for $600,000, you're going to be lucky to get 3 right now, depending on what they did or didn't do, where it is, going up, going down. So the neighborhood tax base is halved, not 100%, but it's bad. I'm living in a house where I don't have any neighbors around me at all in a whole block. So when we're talking about money for preservation, I just want to put that in context.
Teresa Desgan for the record again. That's something that I can look into with these other communities that have been affected the same way that we are and how they do it and what makes sense from them, so we can learn by example. So that's something that I will include in my research on that. And I think we did a little bit of math, and that 1/10 would be on a $300,000 home, $30 a year, if our math is right.
Yeah.
Janine?
This is Janice Denton. That would be great if you would do that. I'm just wondering, should it be only on public, or are you wanting it to be on private homes as well? Or just public facilities, signs, all of that sort of thing?
I'm not sure what the laws are. That's
Yeah,
where I
there's
guess
probably laws.
I would turn to Attorney Leskovich and say, hey, what are we capable of doing? What does make sense that we can do?
I will certainly look into that. 'Cause
Thank
it
you.
brings up a very interesting component. It's kind of
Thank
like
you.
an indirect special assessment kind of.
Yes, and
but it's a routine 1/10.
Yes,
mill.
when I was in Mount Dora, they were alluding to that. They have a very high millage rate there, and that's what has kept their city so preserved and beautiful.
But most of the city is historic, though. The majority of the city is historic.
Which
Not
city?
necessarily.
Mount Dora?
Yeah.
Oh, very.
Yeah.
The city center is, but all around it, and that's how they've done it too. You get out of that specific city center, and then everything, that's where you're going into the big roads with your Walmarts and your grocery stores and all that kind of stuff. I've been there a couple of times too in the past year. So,
And those areas are charged with the millage rate that they're talking about as well, not just the.
no,
I don't know the specifics on that, Debbie, but those are things that our attorney and I can look into.
Janine?
Well, my only concern is, and maybe I'm playing devil's advocate here, is that the legislature's really pushing that we may not have ad valorem taxes. They're going to put something on the ballot, and I'm sure most people will be like, yeah, I don't want to pay ad valorem taxes on my homesteaded home. So that just kind of worries me a little bit. The other thing is, as I look deeper into this, there is a tourist development tax for historic preservation that other small cities do use. And that would be, on the hotel rooms or the short stays, where we could put another 1% or 2% tax on those and put it right into our historic preservation fund. I think that might be a good idea. I think the county is the one that would collect that, but I've looked around the other areas and some people do it. Some cities and municipalities do it.
Yeah, I think that, I'm sorry, Missy.
I'm sorry, would you like me to include that on the list that we're developing of things
That
that
would
we'd
be
like to
great.
discuss with the county commissioners?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, please.
And I know previous council also was talking about, even with the flooding, that they wanted to just tax the downtown District 1 area. And we were saying, that, at least that I was saying no, because everybody uses that road. But this is where it concerns me, where if we're talking about using it specifically for somebody's home, that's a little different, you know, because what is the public purpose if it's for somebody's home? And I understand that we want to, you know, save these historic homes, but I love your idea with, you know, a tourist tax possibly, because, you know, you're going to have people in other districts who are saying, listen, I have my, you know, canal maintenance that I have to pay for and nobody else is paying for it, and they pay a hefty amount already. And you've got different, you know, when you say a $300,000 home, other areas in the rest of the city are a lot more than 100,000. So if you're doing, you know, even $500,000, you might want to consider just a dollar amount then, because
A tenth of a mil.
you know, a tenth of a mil.
Get it right.
I want to get it right.
Frank, correct me. A tenth of a mil.
One thing that Cedar Key is doing, they were working with the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation and the University of Florida. We're already working with them. They included a resilient Cedar Key adaptation plan that they are close to completing, elevating and wet-proofing historic buildings and using nature-based living shoreline. So those are all things that I want to look into, but I thought they sounded very interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
We can do a road trip. I'll go with you.
I'll go.
The other thing,
Beautiful area. I was just there not too long ago.
So Janine, for the record, the other thing I want to bring up is it's not just, it wouldn't be just for homes too, because we have like the Methodist, I call it the Methodist Church, sorry, I got married there and went there. You know, that church just called me a few months ago saying, after the flooding, we have to preserve this old building and we don't have the money, and do you have anything? And I thought, no, we don't have anything, but this would be great.
Well, that's why I was saying when we're talking about a preservation fund, I don't know what that means yet.
Yes.
And that's the point. We're talking about it, lots of good minds in this whole town. So just the thought, even discussing it, and we decide what that looks like, or if it's even possible.
No, we have templates from other cities, like even
Absolutely.
in Tampa, so yeah.
Okay. Are we good?
Yep.
We still want to talk about AC Freeman House, since TJ, you already kind of talked about that, right? The restoration?
Well, I think we skipped over.
The transitioning.
Yeah, the transition.
Oh, excuse me,
this board.
transitioning of the Historic Preservation Advisory Board. I already checked that one off. I guess I'm trying to get ahead of myself here.
And I think I've sent all of you an email about, I am frustrated of what is the purpose of this board if we cannot, if our hands are tied. We're just holding people up for 18 months to the point of frustration and they want to sue us. So what is the point of this board and how can we make it more effective?
Teresa, let me just give the summary real quick, okay?
Sorry.
Okay, no worries. It's the discussion regarding utilization HPAB as a decision-making board rather than an advisory board. Architectural review authority and enforcement measures. Sure, Debbie Lutz for the record. So from what I'm hearing you say is like, you're saying no, but then it goes to council and we're just, you know, saying yes, and after you just said no, you know, is that what I'm understanding?
Well, and I understand that we can't hold people up forever unless we have some teeth that mean something and actually we have a criteria and we can say this is legal, we can do this, but we can't do that. So I need a lot of input from you on this.
Sounds like you and I are going to lunch one.
I think we are.
In Mount Dora. In Mount Dora.
Well, that would be a violation of sunshine law, wouldn't it, if it comes up? So, and there are different. There's advisory boards and there are preservation boards. They're not really a big difference technically, but I've done what Teresa's done. I've looked at different cities in the state of Florida. I think the biggest thing is that we have some teeth. It's that you just don't jump over our heads to do whatever you want to do. We're rewriting the LDRs. This should be part of Chapter 26. It's the time to look at it. We have gotten our feet way wet in this year after these storms? Oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
No, very wet.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
David Lexon, I think that's what is also very important is that when we're looking at the LDRs, I think it is so important for each and every one of you to have input as to what you see is important for our historic. It isn't for us to do, it's for you to do. And I think that's where you're going to have some teeth in this, is because you're going to be the decision makers as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how anybody else feels, but I think you are the ones who need to work on the LDRs to make sure it fits your, criteria, so that you know what is going to be good and what is going to be bad. And hopefully, once we get the, contributing structures, the historic, what your criteria is for a structural engineer, hopefully it's going to make things so much easier for you.
So we only have a couple boards that actually have the teeth, which is, the canal advisory, code compliance. And even with canal advisory, they still advise us on what they think the budget should be. But they also do make some final decisions when it comes to, some permits and whatnot. So I could see it being that. My obviously concern is that if that's the route we're going to go, I mean, do we now look at all of our boards that are just advisory boards and look into making those decisions? And I don't know that answer either. But my biggest thing would be criteria as to what your purview would and wouldn't be.
And I agree with that. And the other thing that I found out just at our last meeting, when we were going through all our bylaws and what we need to do and all that, some of the stuff, we make a recommendation, it goes to the planning board.
Right.
And the planning board can just tell you guys, they never even heard from us because they don't think it's important enough to tell you that. So that's a problem there. It's kind of like, that's another hoop. And of course, that's things like maybe parking in the historic district. That's like, it's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But it goes to planning, and then planning, so we have to go to planning, and then planning tells you whatever they want to do. And I'm not saying planning's a bad board, I'm not. I'm just saying that's one step I don't think we need to have in there. That's just me, if we're going to rewrite the LDRs.
Hopefully the quarterly meetings will help prevent that, so that we have better, communication with each other, so we're not putting even more of a burden onto Rachel in planning, that you can go to her for advice and to, or Dr. Reichert, you can do that, but then when you talk with us, maybe it will make things much easier.
And we have other planners on staff that can be of assistance with this as well, so.
Thank you.
Doesn't always have to be Miss Rachel.
The one-arm paper hanger, Rachel.
Poor Rachel.
Okay.
I asked this quite a while ago when we were talking about A.C. Freeman House and how it got into such a shape that it's in. And you told me it's because you had no teeth.
None.
And it was because the previous councils never allowed it.
Right.
But what would these teeth look like? What would it amount to?
That's the big question.
That's the big question, and I didn't come here with all of that. It was to open the dialogue, and I'm sure everyone's going to come up with, this is, to me, the easiest thing to say is no. It's lazy. No one's looked into what are we really talking about. And none of this stuff is really easy. There's not a real quick answer. So to just have the dialogue, and all of us leave this room thinking about this, like you did, Janine, making notes about certain things, before you came. We all walk out the door with that, and then the next time we talk, which I love having the quarterlies, is that we've had time to percolate, we've had time to look at why this wouldn't work, why that could work, why that may work. And so I don't know, I just think I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I think we all understand, I hope we all understand, now's the time, it's a year in, to make the assessments as to what we can do to make this process something that's actually workable and that actually does help the citizens and residents of the city of Punta Gorda. Because that's what our job is. Our job here as a municipality is their welfare, their future. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Lucille Ponte, I'm just going to add to that too. I think we've been very reactive on the board. So,
Yeah.
hurricane happens and then we got to do something.
Yeah.
Part of it is we need to recognize that hurricanes aren't going away. They may be getting worse. We don't know. So part of it is we need to plan for the future, because the weather part is going to be consistent. Mother Nature doesn't care whether we have our ducks in line, so to speak, here. So we have to actually be more prepared, because we are going to get more of these storms. People are trying to do things like elevate their home in recognition of the fact that these things are happening in the community more often, the storms are longer, they're more powerful, we're having more flooding, even to areas that are, people had never had them before, we know happened with Helene and Milton. So part of it is we have to stop being kind of reactive. We know this is going to happen. So let's try to plan for it and not just wait till the next storm and then have another running around trying to figure out what to do.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you guys know when the last time your bylaws were reviewed or modified or?
Well, they were lightly reviewed, I think, in 2022. And then I think what's happened is because of the change in the LDRs going back, they kind of got wiped out. But it wasn't any, I will say, Attorney, it was not anything extensive. It was
They were
kind of
just
a few
reviewed?
extra things. They were reviewed
Yeah.
by, they were reviewed by us, but we were sort of only brought into the conversation at the end of it. Like, okay, these are the changes we're going to make. What do you think about them? So we were not actively involved in being allowed to kind of go through and do a deeper dive into it. It was more like, we're going to add a couple of extra things for you to do and extra things for you to sign off on, but that was about it. And we were not allowed kind of in the front end of the discussion to really get into it in any kind of depth.
It was a
But
fait
it was-
accompli.
It
a
was
presentation.
2022, it was very minor.
Okay. Would council be okay if I looked at the bylaws
Sure.
and,
Absolutely.
you know, hearing what you guys are talking here, how legally you could potentially give more teeth or certain other avenues to, because if they haven't been looked at in several years, they need to be looked at.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. We'll do it at lunch, I'm out door.
You have a long lunch.
That's a sunshine law violation.
I know one of the things that we just had a consensus is about a resiliency meeting, and I think that would be really great for each and every one of you to come to as well, because we're talking about the flooding and the King High Tide and what can we do. So if you're there also learning and listening, that might help us as well, especially with the downtown flooding that we have. I don't think we have a date yet though for that.
You'll have to set your council schedule first, and then I will be scheduling that right the day preceding the council meeting.
We did that. TJ, you don't want to bring any more about the house restoration?
Just unless you have any other questions.
Anybody have any questions?
I think so.
Okay, I think the last thing that we're going to talk about is post-damage and rebuild decision. And I think that's talking about the 50% rule, and
We covered that.
we did, final
Yeah.
30 to historic, so 50% rule. So I think we kind of talked about it. Does anybody else have anything that they want to include in this?
Well, Janine Polk, for the record, I'll just reiterate the land development regulations. I mean, rebuilding and redoing all of those, you guys have to have some teeth into that. I think most of you will probably agree what's being built right now at 25 dwelling units an acre is not historically correct. I don't care if people say it was allowed, look at it. It's an apartment complex that was not allowed. And I think that it's a travesty, and you guys are gonna need to help us correct that when we go to rewrite the land development regulations. Thank you.
I think Debbie Luck's going off of Janine too is we don't want it to have such a high density that you're looking at Airbnbs and all of a sudden our historic downtown isn't our historic homes. It's now all of a sudden vacation rentals for everybody. And these homes are absolutely beautiful and it'd be nice to keep. TJ does a great job of building these homes, so it's really nice to keep it, you know, our home area as well instead of just rentals. Melissa, Janice, do you have anything?
Dawn, I want to say thank you for the open and honest dialogue.
Oh, that's me, ask anybody.
Listen, you know what, but you know what, but
That's
what
just a
helps
Tuesday
solve.
for Dawn.
That's just a
Yeah.
Tuesday,
Yeah.
that's what helps solve problems.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Do any of you have any other comments that you want to bring?
Steve Valdez for the record. We're certainly talking a lot about the Freeman House all the time. And I always just, when I look at it straight on, if you just kind of cock your head to the left, there's this very historic tree that was made into a monument. And I don't know whether it should always be connected or what, but you know, it's to me, it's part of that corner. And I think it should be looked at when we talk about the Freeman House, because I mean the tree itself is historic.
Yes.
or
Yes.
the stump, or whatever we want to
Yes.
call it. And I just think it's something we need to keep in mind.
Charlie, you want to say anything about that?
TJ, for
Think
the
about
record,
it all
I don't
the
know how to
time.
preserve trees, so.
Preserve trees.
I have just worked towards the preservation and restoration of the statue. Its significance is much greater than most people are aware of. I have a website that will go live hopefully in a few days where we'll be soliciting for donations. It's kind of been treated as an ugly stepchild, kind of a little bit. You know, it's like, who? And I've taken it on myself, even though I don't have any ownership of it, just because it's something I want to do. And Melissa Reichart has been very helpful in helping me facilitate these plans. Thank you, Melissa. Haven't been prepared to discuss anything before this council on that subject today, but if you want, I'll think about it, and perhaps we can discuss what you think would be a good framework with respect to exactly whose statue is it and how is it going to be preserved, and again, we want the citizenry to participate in that. But anyway, do you have any questions for me? Do we want it to be part of the Freeman House? I would be fine with that, by the way. And did we ever paint the cables, Melissa?
What's that?
Did we ever paint the cables?
Not yet, no.
Good. I'm looking forward to that.
I have just one answer for Ms. Mizell. The number of demolitions so far, the permits is 9.
Okay, I've been asking for a whole year, from the day after Milton till now, and I have not gotten that list. It's been updated with certain things. Are you saying, just for clarification, are you saying there's only been 9 demos done and requested and permitted in a year?
Applications for demolition permit is what I'm saying.
In a year?
Since, Ron, do you know what the start date was, or Hank?
October. Of last year till October of this year?
Fiscal year.
Good evening, Mayor, Madam Mayor, City Council. Hank Flores, Urban Design Manager. That list is the ones that were went through the CA process, certificates of appropriateness.
Okay.
They're not actual ones that were demoed. I don't know the total. I think we've got other structures that weren't on like the local register that were demoed.
Okay.
So there are actually more than that.
Okay.
That have been approved for demolition.
Yeah, for me, I get confused, you know, what's this list mean and what's that list mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why I was always asking for, what do we got for a year in review? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
How many is that?
You are looking for the whole city?
Well,
Or,
for our purposes, probably not. Let's say District 1 and District 2, because District 2 was hit also. I know there's homes that had to be demoed at PGI, I think, too. So, however you guys want to do it, but I think what I want is to see the picture of what happened after Helene and Milton, those demos, those ones, the applications, the requests, and the actual demos, because that gives us a better picture of what have we lost. It doesn't necessarily have to be a District 1.
A map would be nice. Like if you just put a map out, and
Yeah.
just pinpoint, so people can kind of see where it's been or how
Yeah.
scattered it's been. Sorry, that's more work.
we'll see where that lands. Somewhere between building and urban design, possibly, but yes, we'll try and do that. And we do publish the list of demo permit applications in the agenda for City Council. It's under their consent agendas.
Got it.
Is there a time frame when they apply for them, so when they actually come down?
There is.
No one
Rachel would
stepped
know
in
if there is a
here.
time
Is
frame.
it you?
I was just reading that, I think online at the city, or I might have it here somewhere. There is a time frame, so if you request it and you get it and you don't do anything, but I don't know how long that is, then you have to reapply. So is it 40? I don't know.
I apologize, I missed the question.
Okay, so I applied for a demo permit, I get it, right? That, and I don't do anything in 6 months. Does that get I think there's a time frame.
A permit would be valid for 6 months, and then you would either have to apply for an extension, or if not, it would just be considered abandoned.
Okay.
Expired.
And sorry, Rachel, I'm gonna ask you a question. So there's circumstances that you will extend it, like, you know, when you've got a house that's been abandoned that should come down and they keep on just pushing it off, you know, when is it that you say enough is enough, we need to take this down, it's a safety hazard or anything?
I haven't had any yet that I've come across that I've given an extension on a demo permit. Hypothetically, they would have to show some very extenuating circumstances of why it had not been done, and potentially provide a new report to show if there's any differences between what the structure was 6-7 months ago versus when they're requesting the extension.
So like with Ron going through town and looking at a bunch of these places that hit the 50% rule back in Ian, and they're still standing, you know, is there any type of like mandatory where we say you've got to get a demolition permit and take it down within the, you know, certain amount of time or anything?
If we have a code case and the property is deemed as a safety hazard, then they would be directed to take it down. In order to actually make that happen, we would potentially get into a scenario where we would need to hire a contractor and have it taken down and put a lien on the property, because we can't force them to do it. The most we could do is put daily fines on the property, which is just going to be a lien and isn't going to get paid. Thank you.
See your brain is something else. Anybody else with anything? Public comment? Public comment? Anybody want to say anything in the public? Thank you. Nope. Meeting's adjourned. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.